This is Vietnam, the land of dongs, people named Nguyen's, and this American nightmare. Like Korea and Japan, Vietnam historically sits within the Sinosphere, sharing a number of cultural and religious similarities with China. Although Vietnamese people and Chinese people look kinda similar on the outside, there are a lot of differences underneath the skin. Like Koreans and Japanese people, Vietnamese people, more specifically the Kin people who forms the majority in Vietnam, are not part of the Han Chinese people group. Kin people speaks the Vietnamese language, which belongs to the Austroasiatic language family, not related to the Chinese language. Given Vietnam is strategically located below China, how did the Vietnamese Kin people manage to resist Sinicization when the Han Chinese people expanded southwards and Sinicized the crap out of everyone? Well, the story of Vietnam can be traced back to the ancient times, when the Yue people, arguably one of the ancestors of modern-day Vietnamese Kin people, dominated southern China. Then, the Chinese people expanded southwards, doing a lot of military conquests as well as cultural assimilations. As such, the Red River Delta region in modern-day Vietnam became the bastion of Yue people culture, because it is located further south from the encroachment of Chinese people from the north. Lots of kingdoms came and went, including this Olac kingdom who unified a bunch of other Yue kingdoms and tribes. Then, Nam Yue came along. Nam Yue was an independent kingdom established by a Chinese warlord from the collapsing Chinese Qin dynasty. Nam Yue dominated southern China and modern-day Vietnam. Depending on your perspective, Nam Yue can be considered either as the starting point of the Chinese domination of Vietnam, or the continuation of an era of Vietnamese independence as the ruling dynasty were assimilated into the local Yue culture. In any case, Nam Yue was independent, doing its best to resist the Chinese Han dynasty. Nevertheless, Han dynasty would eventually conquer Nan Yue, kick-starting the 1,000 years of Chinese domination of Vietnam. From China's point of view, the Red River Delta was effectively a part of China proper during the 1,000 years period. Thus, Sinicization of non-Chinese people in the Red River Delta region is considered the norm, as this is also what was happening throughout southern China. From Vietnam's point of view, the 1,000 years of Chinese presence is considered a period of subjugation and foreign domination. Anyway, the incorporation of Vietnam to China greatly exposed the local Yue people to Buddhism, Chinese religions and philosophies, Chinese government administration, Chinese writing system, and many other Chinese stuff. Nevertheless, due to the mountainous geographical features in the inlands which made accessibility difficult, some Yue nobles were able to maintain control over their lands, paying tributes to the Han Chinese overlords. The Chinese saw the Yue people as uncivilized and backward barbarians who should be Sinicized as soon as possible. The Yue people, particularly the Yue nobles who were able to maintain nominal independence under Chinese overlords, saw Sinicization as Chinese aggression against local customs. This beef manifested in the form of rebellions, notably the Chung Sisters Rebellion and the Tri Ut Trinh Revolt. Yes, Vietnamese girls are badass. During that 1,000 years, Yue people experienced the full load of Chinese dynasties, from the Han all the way to the Tang. After the fall of Tang dynasty, Vietnam, also known as An Nam or Dai Viet, became independent. It is noted that during this period, what is now modern-day Vietnam can be generally divided into two parts, Dai Viet in the north, and Champa in the south. Champa kingdoms were formed by Cham people, an Austronesian people group who adopted Indian and Hindu cultural practices, and later a few adhered to Islam. Like China, the history of Dai Viet had a number of successive ruling dynasties and also periods of fragmentation. When the Chinese Song dynasty emerged, Dai Viet did not feel like being annexed to China proper again, and thus fought hard to maintain its independence. After the Li Song War, a truce was made between the Chinese Song dynasty and the Dai Viet Li dynasty, establishing the Chinese-Vietnamese national borders, which is largely unmodified until today. It was a huge deal in the context of the history of Vietnamese people, because it means that Dai Viet is now definitely recognized as an independent non-Chinese polity, and that Red River Delta is no longer considered as a part of China proper. Later, the Mongols came along and conquered all of China, and was hoping to come over to the south and eat Dai Viet alive. Too bad for the Mongols, Dai Viet managed to resist the Mongol army, no matter how hard the Mongols tried. So how did Dai Viet manage to beat the Mongols when even the Russians could not do it? Well, Dai Viet avoided open field battles and city sieges, and instead fought in swampy areas. Also, tropical diseases were not a pleasant experience for the Mongols, and thus the Mongols gave up on trying to conquer Dai Viet. It was a defining moment in the Vietnamese history, as it shows that unlike China who succumbed to Mongol invasions, Vietnam was able to stand on its own against foreign invaders, charts its own path in the regional geopolitics, further solidifying its national identity. Dai Viet expanded southwards at the expense of the Champa kingdoms and Cham people, just like how the Chinese dynasties expanded southward at the expense of the Uyghur kingdoms and Uyghur people, ages ago. It's like the Vietnamese version of Manifest Destiny. Like the Chinese dynasties, Dai Viet enforced assimilation of the subjugated non-Vietnamese people, to assert its control over the southern regions. Dai Viet soon came into conflict with the Khmer Empire, a beef that continues to manifest itself in the modern times in the form of tensions between Vietnam and Cambodia. Later, the Chinese Ming dynasty came along and beat up Dai Viet. But this time around, the Chinese did not manage to stay for long, because there were countless Vietnamese revolts. Eventually, Dai Viet managed to regain its independence by beating up the Chinese Ming dynasty. This victory further solidified Vietnam's national identity, and that the Red River Delta region is definitely and irreversibly Vietnamese, not a part of China proper. To guarantee its independence, Dai Viet acted as a tributary state to the Chinese Ming dynasty, and later the Qing dynasty. Throughout its existence, Dai Viet adopted Chinese characters, added some Vietnamese edits, so to enable Vietnamese language to be written using Chinese characters, a bit similar to the Koreans, Tanguts, Japanese, Khitans, and anyone who fancy using Chinese characters to write their own language. Fast forward, during the Nguyen dynasty, Dai Viet was officially named Vietnam. It was all fun and games until the Europeans arrived. Long story short, Vietnam became a part of the French Empire. During the French colonial period, the Latin-based Vietnamese alphabets were introduced, which were in use until today. France divided Vietnam into three parts, namely Tonkin, Annam, and Cochin China. As the Vietnamese people were never happy being subjugated by foreign forces, they revolted constantly. Both the French and later the Japanese experienced the full load of Vietnamese resistance. After World War II, France sought to reassert its control on Indochina. Due to the global geopolitics post-World War II, the Vietnamese anti-colonial movement became a part of the Cold War theater. As far as this Vietnamese dude is concerned, the main aim is to restore the Vietnamese independence, and he chose communism as means to achieve the ultimate aim. From France's perspective, it wants to continue to be seen as a relevant global power, and thus tried to hold on to Vietnam. From the point of view of United States, allowing a communist country to exist in Southeast Asia is a big no-no, as it could cause domino effect in this region. From China's and Soviet Union's perspective, achieving communism in Vietnam is a huge brownie point. Vietnam was thus split into the communist North and the capitalist South. Long story short, North Vietnam and its supporters managed to beat up the French and the Americans, unifying Vietnam again. So how did those American soldiers lose to some Vietnamese rice farmers? Well, to grossly simplify, there was a lack of public support for war in the United States, and also the Americans were not able to win the hearts of the average Vietnamese citizens effectively, and thus it was a lost cause. If South Vietnam managed to resist the North, South Vietnam might become something like South Korea today, who knows? Anyway, back to reality. After the Vietnam War, Vietnam beat up Cambodia, had a huge beef with China, did some economic reforms, experienced high economic growth, and here we are today. The existence of Vietnam as an independent country today is a testament to the continuous preservation of the Vietnamese sense of national identity, even in the midst of historical Sinicization. If Dai Viet lost the wars against the Song, Mongol, and the Ming, northern Vietnam, particularly the Red River Delta region, will probably be a part of China today, as it has once been considered a part of China proper for 1,000 years. Conversely, if Nanzhao and the Dali Kingdom managed to stay independent and resist the invasions by the Chinese dynasties, we might be able to see a modern independent Bai state in Yunnan today, who knows? The lesson from the existence of Vietnam is that, if you look like a Chinese dude but are not keen to identify as one, please do your best in resisting Sinicization, or die trying. Today, the future is definitely bright for Vietnam, as it is considered a very attractive country for foreign direct investment, as well as a rising tourist destination. When you visit Vietnam, please do not label the Vietnamese people as baguette-eating French Asians who writes in weird Latin alphabets, or worst, calling Vietnamese people as Chinese. Vietnamese people can definitely be proud of their distinct cultural heritage and rich history, a history of resisting big bullies from all around the world. Thanks for watching.